I am Jamie Palmer. I am a business strategist and a business simplifier. So, it's sort of funny. My husband and I were talking the other day with all the crazy things going on in the world, and we're homeschooling our two little children. And we were like, oh my goodness, how amazing would it be if we went up to New Hampshire and went skiing and stayed up there for a whole month this winter? And it snapped me back to when I was a kid. And one of the things we used to do that when I was a child, we would go up to New Hampshire, and we'd pass this cool little bookstore. And my dad would always give me some money, and I would go to this bargain section where they had all these textbooks. They had psychology textbooks and business textbooks, and I would dig through and pick out a few that I wanted. And one of the things that I would do is I'd go back and I'd study that, and I'd make workbooks and worksheets, and I'd run around teaching that to anybody who would listen to me. And so today in this presentation, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to bore you with my 17 years of business experience and the thousands of entrepreneurs that I've helped along the way. But what I am going to do is I'm going to give you 5 really succinct things and simple things that you can do to build your business online. So how does that sound? Let me know in the comments how that sounds. I love to be super interactive. So if you're on here, be sure to let me know in the chat what it is that you do, who you are, your business, all that sort of fun stuff. So that's the plan for today's call. And I got my notes here. So if you see me look down, that's why. So I started my business in college, and I have been in business for 17 years. September 1st marks 17 years of business for me. And one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again, especially when my business was an agency, was that someone would come to me for help with something like social media. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we'd go to do their social media and there'd be something missing, right? Like they wouldn't be driving traffic to a landing page where there was only one option, or they would have a landing page and they'd have a freebie set up, like sign up for my list and get this thing, but then they wouldn't be emailing the list. Or one of my favorites, probably from 14, 15 years ago, I made this website for this daycare in Rhode Island. And the woman was like, I want to do this website because I want to be able to get more leads and sales. And she called me up frantic one day and was like, Jame, I haven't got a single person from the website. It's just not working and yada, yada, yada. And come to find out, I log into the back end of the website, and she had 30 contact us forms that she had never replied to. And so when I think about building an online business, I think about it as an ecosystem, right? And all of your ecosystem needs to be connected, and it needs to be integrated, and it needs to be cohesive. And so what I was seeing over and over and over again were all of these gaps that people had where they were losing people along the way. And I need to just turn my do not disturb on. I swear I had done it earlier. So I would see all these gaps, and I was just like, okay, so here's what the problem is. You want to come onto the online space, but you might not necessarily have all the pieces in place. And that is one of the biggest mistakes almost all small businesses and entrepreneurs make when it comes to truly having success in the online world. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to share with you guys some of those disconnects that I've seen along the way as I go through these 5 talking points. But I'm also going to talk to you about how you can better shorten these gaps in your own business and really make sure everything is interconnected. So one of the most important things to get right out of the gate in your business is understanding who your ideal client is and who that human is that you are marketing to. And I'm not talking from a surface level, meaning their demographics, their age, their sex, their gender, whether they own, rent, or buy, their income information, whether they have kids or not. Or I'm talking at a really, really deep level. And oftentimes people kind of glaze over this, right? They're like, oh, I know who that is. And then they they just kind of move forward, and they aren't necessarily doing their due diligence here, and they aren't digging deep enough, and they aren't doing the research. And then what happens is when they go to sell something online, they've built a list and a community of people who aren't necessarily their ideal client, because they didn't take the time and get hyper clear on it in the beginning. So when you think about building the foundation of your business, getting who your ideal client is, like, and really honing that and doing the research and understanding how they talk and understanding, like, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what keeps them up at night, what other things or products have they tried that are similar to yours, what are, all of these things along the way that they can come up for them, right? And there's a lot of different things, right? So when you think about, hey, how well do I know my ideal client? You want to always go deeper than you think that you're going to need to go. And you're also going to need to understand where that ideal client hangs out online, because not every person is going to be on every platform. And so if your ideal client is someone that's hanging out on Instagram, but you're posting on Facebook, there's going to be a massive disconnect. And ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to be wasting time, money, and valuable resources building a community on a platform that just isn't the right one for you. And so taking the time to do that due diligence, to do the research, to find out the language they use. Ultimately, my goal when I work with clients is to get to such a deep level that you know that ideal client so well. When they read your copy or they read your social media posts, you want them like shaking their head, being like, how did Jamie get inside my head? Like, that's how well you want to know this person. And ultimately, as I mentioned, it's one of the pieces that is a foundational piece that sets you up for success long term. And ultimately, taking your time here and getting it right is going to serve you down the road tenfold. So super duper important to get that right. So that's piece number one. Number one is understanding who your human is that you're marketing to. Number two is, what does your client journey look like? Okay. So you might be thinking, well, James, what is a client journey? A client journey is ultimately all the steps and touch points along the way that someone is going to take to go from prospect to customer to raving fan. And it's like, what is the content that they need to experience? What is the lesson that they need to learn? How do you need to help them move forward? All of those things play into what is the client journey. Ultimately, if you're somebody that's in the online space, that could potentially mean that you're driving them into your signature program. So for me, as an example, my signature program is my Business Ecosystem Builders group program. And it's super duper important that every step along the way and every touch point and every marketing milestone in my client journey moves them one step closer to either becoming a client or not becoming a client. Okay. And the not becoming a client part is just as important, right? Because if somebody is not the right fit for one of my programs, I don't necessarily want them to stay inside my marketing ecosystem. And that's where that polarization in your marketing can really be important. I always like to joke, if I'm not frustrating someone with something that I'm posting on social media by 10 a.m., I'm not doing a good job marketing myself. And so one of the things that's important to keep in mind is, so you meet somebody on social media, right? And then that next step is they go to your freebie. and then they get into your nurture sequence. And at the end of your nurture sequence, perhaps they buy your book or a self-study course that you have. And then from there, they go into another sequence where they get invited to go to a master class where they can, buy into your signature program and buy into whatever that next step is. So what are all the pieces that need to be in place for that? What retargeting ads need to be in place? What, cornerstone content do you need to create? What are the different things and objections that are coming up for those people along the way that you can then create a piece of content to combat those objections or combat that fear that they might have around moving forward and why you're the right person to do that. And that's really mapping out that client journey. Those are really the two, understanding you're human and mapping out that client journey are like two of the biggest foundational pieces that you can have when it comes to setting your online business up for success. And they're essential. They are so essential. And I can't tell you how many people who have come to me who have built a business and they haven't really addressed those things. And they're kind of haphazardly getting clients, and they're probably pretty booked up because they're, selling one-to-one, they're trading dollars for hours. And they're just at this place where they, haven't necessarily intentionally started marketing. And for those of you who are listening, like really when you're thinking about building an online business and succeeding online, this is about intentionally creating marketing that pulls people into your ecosystem so they ultimately become a customer. And so this is all with that intent. So when you have that, one, understanding who your human is in place, and then two, you have this client journey mapped out, these are the foundational pieces that you will need to begin to start building that online and business ecosystem around. And I've added like a little, I added a little 2A in here because it's really, really important to note. And I have a really, really long podcast. It's not really that long. It's like 20 minutes. I have a long podcast about this because I think it's important to note when you are marketing your business, right? And you're thinking about your client journey, right? What is that next step you want somebody to take? And that next step you want somebody to take. Ultimately, each one of those pieces should be marketed with a singular focus, right? So when somebody's on social media, the whole goal should be then to get them on your email list. And then once they're on your email list, it's like, get them to buy that first product. Or if, it's booking a call, right? You want them to take whatever that next step is. So every single piece of content that you create should only be marketed with that singular focus. And many times it either has no focus at all. From what I've seen in my years of experience, it's either there's no focus at all to the marketing, or there's like 3 or 4 calls to action, which is super duper confusing. And so that's where you kind of have to find that balance, and understanding that client journey becomes really easy to then make the decision on what is that next step that you're getting that commitment from, right? So if somebody's on your email list, you've established a little bit of a relationship with them. So what is that next step of trust building to get them to go to that next level with you? And what's that action step? And that action step is where you're going to integrate that call to action so you aren't having those gaps in your online business ecosystem. Okay, now we're going to get into number 3, which is all about content creation. So if you're going to have an online business and you're going to build your business online, whether you're a local business and you're leveraging online to drive traffic into your store, or you're somebody who operates solely online, or you've got some sort of hybrid, if you want to be successful online, you have to commit to publishing content. Okay. And once you start publishing content, it can sort of feel like a hamster wheel, right? Because once you start, you kind of always have to keep going. And it's something that a lot of people come to me with in complete overwhelm. They're like, I feel like I'm on a treadmill and I'm never able to get off. And the fact of the matter is, yes, I understand you and I hear you. But here's the good news. There are lots of ways in which you can get more strategic with your content creation so that you can still publish content, still get visible, and not drive yourself crazy. And so I like to think of content creation in terms of macro content, micro content, and nano content. Okay. So macro content is that longer form content. Okay. That's a long form blog post, a podcast, a YouTube. They're pieces of content that are SEO'd and they have a longer lifespan. Okay. They have a lifespan of days or weeks or months or even years. I mean, I have this YouTube video. You can go on my YouTube and find it, Outlier Marketing Group with Jamie Palmer. And it's a Canva YouTube video. And it's a how-to tutorial that I did 2 years ago. And it's probably one of my least favorite pieces of content that I have ever created. But let me just tell you, that sucker still gets 200 views a week. And it's still getting me people on my email list. And so understanding that creating macro content is going to pay you dividends long-term is one of the easiest ways to kind of shift in how you look at your content creation in the online space. So every business owner, every entrepreneur, every person who wants to be in the online space needs to be creating macro content. So pick a type of macro content. If you love to write blogs. If you love to be on video, do YouTube or Facebook Live. If you like to be kind of behind the scenes and do more audio, do podcasts. But remember, you want to make sure you pick the platform or the ecosystem that your ideal client is also hanging out on. So keep that in mind as you're selecting it. You kind of want those two to intersect at some point. So that's your macro content, right? And then you have your micro content. Your micro content is the content that you use to drive traffic, or the post that you do to drive traffic to your macro content. So, hey, I created this YouTube video. Now I have to post about the fact that I created this YouTube video and get people to actually watch it. That is that micro content. That's, generally speaking, happens on social media. It could potentially happen inside your email list, but it has a short lifespan. It's usually hours or days, maybe a week. It isn't usually much longer than that. It's got a finite amount of time that you're going to be able to get traction with it. And then the last type of content that I think about is nano content. So one thing that I do in my business with anybody that's in any of my group coaching programs or my one-on-one consults is I highly recommend that people take their macro content and get it transcribed and repurpose it. And from that repurposing, they create nano content. So nano content is content that just lives on whatever social media platform that it is. It doesn't have an intent to try and get somebody to go to that next level with them. It's simply value-driven content that stays within whatever platform you're posting it on. So social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever that is. And again, short lifespan, but it's value-driven. It's one of those touch points where, hey, get to know me better. I'm not asking you for anything. Just read this, right? And so when you think about, as a business owner, if you can create one piece of macro content each week and then have an assistant then make your micro and nano content, it becomes really, really easy to get into that rhythm of creating content, which is essential for success in the online space. So that's my number 3 essential for building an online business. You have to pick a publishing platform, pick one piece of macro content, pick 2 different platforms that you want to really leverage and show up on those platforms, do it well, be consistent, which I'll talk more about in just a few minutes. But pick one type of macro content, pick 2 social media platforms, and that's it. Don't try to spread yourself too thin. It can be overwhelming and exhausting and all the things, so that you're not doing it well. And I've seen it happen over and over again. So I'd rather have you just pick one, like I said, pick one type of macro content, pick 2 social media platforms and just run with it. The 4th essential element to building a successful online presence is to understand and make it simple for people to buy from you. Okay. I cannot tell you how many times I will go to somebody's website and I'm like, I want to buy something from this person. I can't figure it out how, or there's so many steps in the checkout process. And it just becomes more of an aggravation. And then I end up going somewhere else, or I'll go to Amazon or Etsy or somewhere where I know I already have an account and it's easy for me to buy. Because here's the one thing that I know after being in business for myself for 17 years and working with thousands of entrepreneurs in those years is that people love to buy, okay? People love to buy, but they hate to be sold. So it's your job as the business owner to make it as simple as possible for someone to buy from you. And we entrepreneurs, for some reason, we love to make it super hard to buy from us. We love to make it more complicated than it needs to be. We don't necessarily streamline our checkout processes. We aren't super clear on our sales pages. Sometimes we don't even put our pricing online. And so make it really, really, really easy for people to buy from you. And I cannot stress this enough. I worked with a company a few years back, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and they sold cookies online, okay? And they had really, really high-end cookies. They're delicious. Sweet Girl Cookies is the name of the company, and they're out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I first started working with them, they had an 8-page checkout process, which only 30% of people, which is a miracle that they were even getting 30, only 30% of people actually went from the start of the checkout to the finish, okay? And we revamped their website and we made it a 1-page, 2-step checkout process. And their checkout process and checkout success rate increased over 80%. Okay. Now, if that doesn't make you want to go and look and assess how easy it is to buy from you, I do not know what will, because we didn't do anything else. We didn't address their marketing. We didn't address whatever. So it's really, really essential to your success if you're going to be in the online space to make it super duper simple from people to buy from you. I cannot stress that enough, because people they love to buy, but they really hate to be sold. So if you can avoid those sales conversations by making it super easy for someone to check out on your website or to buy a product from you, please, please, please go ahead and do that. It's going to be a game changer for you in your business. And then the fifth and the final element that I always like to bring up, because it always inevitably comes up, is consistency. And consistency is sort of an amazing thing when it works for you, and a killer when it's not working for you. And oftentimes I get a lot of resistance from people who will say, well, James, I've been posting on social media for 3 months and I haven't gotten any results. How come? And every business is different. Every business is going to get different results at different rates. But here's the thing that I do know. For me, I got hyper consistent about posting on my social media in 2016. In 2017, my business doubled. And in 2017, I got even more consistent. I would say I was consistent 80% of the time. In 2018, my business doubled. And so the more consistent I've gotten, the more my business has grown. And I've seen the exact same thing happen for my clients. And building a community online is harder than it used to be, but it's not impossible. And the thing to keep in mind is getting those first 100 or 1,000 really huge raving fans is going to be the hardest part. And from there, you have that momentum behind you. So you have that power of that community that you built behind you to help get more momentum, to get more of a following and more of a community. So the more consistent that you are out of the gate, the faster you're going to get to that first 1,000 people in your community. And the faster you can get to that first 1,000 people in your community, the faster you're going to hit your goals and you're going to meet and exceed them. And when I'm talking about consistency, I'm talking about being consistent over the course of 6 months or a year. Yes, you will start to see a difference after 3 months, but it typically takes 6 months to a year of posting on social media and emailing your list to really start to get those inbound leads and that inbound traffic. Now, I say that I work a lot in the business to business space. So in the business to business space, it does take a little bit longer than in the business to consumer space. You can also think about it from a monetary perspective. If you have a product under $100, you're going to get results a lot faster than somebody who has a product that's $5,000 or $500, because it takes longer to build that relationship to get the results. So think about, okay, I have this product. You can tend to then say, okay, if it's under $100, you should start to see results in 3 months. If you aren't seeing results in 3 months, that's where you might have to go back to say, oh, do I know my ideal client as well as I think I do? Because if I do, I should start to see results by now. If it's been 6 months or a year and you've got a higher end product, same sort of thing applies. If you're not getting the results you want, you have to kind of sit there and say, okay, what am I doing wrong here? What do I need to tweak? Am I selling the right product? Am I speaking the same language? And there's really a whole art and science to it. But I bring it up that the consistency piece is super important. And like I said, the more consistent that you are out of the gate, the faster that you're going to get results. The starting and the stopping is probably one of the worst things that you could do, because it signals subconsciously into the mind of the potential prospect, like, hey, maybe I don't take this too seriously. And so really getting consistent and understanding that less is more. I'd rather have you be consistent and commit to doing 2 posts per week and 1 piece of macro content a month than saying, oh, I'm going to do it every day and I'm going to do, this every day, every week, and then not being able to stick to that. And so for me, those are the 5 essential elements that you need to build a online business and to be successful in the online business. So I'm just going to quickly go through them again. If anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the comments. So essential element number 1 was understand who your human is. Who is that person that you are marketing to? That foundation and that understanding and doing the research there is going to make a big difference for you long term. And then number 2, what is your client journey? Do you know what are like the next steps that you want your client to take along the way? 2A, make sure you market with a singular focus. Number 3, commit to publishing and commit to creating macro content, micro content, and nano content each week. Number 4, understanding that you need to make it as simple as possible for people to buy from you, because people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. And the 5th and final element is be consistent. Be consistent with your marketing, be consistent with your publishing, be consistent with how you're showing up for clients and what you're doing, because it's going to make the biggest difference in the long term. So I hope this was super helpful to everyone here. I'm not seeing any comments